Content is intended to provide accurate information, however, is not intended as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult a financial, legal, or tax professional for specific information regarding your individual situation. Opinions expressed and provided are for general informational purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security.
Welcome to Game Plan for Retirement with Chris McIntire. McIntire Retirement Services, Northwest Ohio's retirement planning resource.
And welcome into the program. This is your Game Plan for Retirement with Northwestern Ohio's resource for a common sense approach to planning for our financial, investment, and retirement future. He is president and founder of McIntire Retirement Services, Northwestern Ohio's resource for perspective and guidance, helping to uncomplicate and clarify the financial world and the difficult decisions that we make with our money. Chris McIntire once again with us. And Chris, always appreciate your time and perspective.
Good morning, Peter. Good to be with you there, Guy.
It's great to be with you. Now, Chris, we've obviously been facing some headwinds in the economy here in 2022, and new challenges seem to be popping up each and every day. It's left investors feeling a bit uneasy, to say the least. It's been a while since we've seen market volatility, so we probably have some questions about what our approach should be, what should we be doing, where do we go from here? And I know you always like to kind of give your perspective on the world around us, the conditions, and what you expect to see or what we are currently seeing and where we may go from here.
Well, Peter, you and I had talked on the show earlier before the Russian invasion into Ukraine that we were going to experience volatility this year in the market with rising interest rates, kind of a change in economic strategy coming on the other side of the pandemic with, the Omicron variant coming in and basically infecting, the bulk of the U.S. population, not to mention the global population. Case numbers are down significantly. You can even be free in California of wearing a mask. And even in New York, you don't need to show vaccination cards and things. So, we were starting to normalize, if you would, and inflation obviously was getting well ahead of the curve. And the Federal Reserve was predicting the rise in interest rates here to try to slow down and taper or tamper down the threat of inflation. Then all of a sudden we would call the Russian invasion into Ukraine a black swan event, and black swan events happen, at least once every 10 years. So you could say the terrorist attacks, the housing crisis, the coronavirus pandemic. I'd like to have a little more room in between these, having one in 2020 and then one in 2022 sure takes the fun out of it. This one's certainly a little different. We've got we could argue a madman with 6,000 nuclear weapons kind of running the show over there right now, and using that Russian rhetoric, and that certainly has thrown a wrench into things for everybody as sanctions tighten, and all the uncertainty that come around events like this are certainly unsettling for everybody. And then when we look at our statements and seeing what has happened to the markets, it certainly cause for concern, buddy. No question about it.
Well, we need to understand that market volatility is a regular occurrence. We will see it from time to time. And we talked, Chris, about the fact that when we see it, a lot of people understandably have an emotional reaction to that, but that fear should never be the driving force behind the decisions that we make with our money. And if we've got that plan, we can be prepared for good times and for challenging times and for headwinds that we may face and the unexpected, because we do see those black swan kind of unexpected events occur with some regularity. So today, talking about proactive preparedness, talking about current and ongoing financial concerns and how we can address them and continue to make forward financial progress with Chris McIntire. If you have questions or concerns about your financial status and outlook and would like to get a plan put together or review and update a current plan, run an analysis on your investment and retirement accounts, and understand better the risks that you are taking, the potential for gains or losses into the future, what the outlook holds, what fees that you are paying, what taxes you may be liable for, and how to identify where there may be opportunistic strategies available for you to further your financial progress. Pick up the phone and give McIntire Retirement Services a call. 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. 800-868-1194. 800-868-1194. Chris, we will see bumps in the road and in the market as well. If we've got that plan, if we have been proactive, we probably are positioned appropriately and hopefully don't overreact or feel like we are taking more losses than we can bear to stomach.
Yeah, Peter. And, with our partners at Brookstone Capital Management and their investment team, they sent out a nice email to us advisors on, look, remember when we do portfolio construction, that portfolio construction around a moderate portfolio, I'll use as an example, is about 60% stocks, 40% bonds, and other types of investments. And, those portfolios have been stress tested to make sure that they stay within that range. So, if it was a 60% stock portfolio, a 40% bond portfolio, we've had a pretty big sell-off in the stock market here in the first quarter. So, you might be at a 50-50 ratio. So on a rebalance, which is what happens here at the start of another quarter that we're just entering, is all right, more money will go back into stocks to keep that 60-40 ratio. You're buying more shares at a lower price. So that's the art of the rebalance and staying within that portfolio allocation. Like Peter said, it's very easy to get emotional and say, look, I want to reinvent the wheel. After a bad 2 months in the stock market, after a historic run up, I want to reinvent everything. That's not to say that you don't lessen some of your exposure. Obviously, if you own some individual stocks concentrated in the European market space, obviously, you want to take some heat out of that, no question about it. But in an overall well-constructed portfolio, which is what many people should have, and then they may have some outlying positions like you and I talked about, Peter, some of the energy positions and the commodity positions you and I have been playing for some clients before we turn the recordings on for the radio show. Peter and I are sharing some things that we're doing, folks. But that's the importance of not abandoning what has been a successful long-term strategy. And, black swan events like this are they're interesting to watch unfold, as a lover of history as I am, and Peter, you are as well, looking at what Russia is doing, and, they're hitting the oligarchs, they're going after the money right now to cut the head off, and cutting off the Russian oil supply, their access to the capital markets, hey, that's certainly going to have a cause and effect. No question about it. Price of oil, diesel fuel, especially, if you look at what's interesting about the price of oil is it takes much more refining to make high quality unleaded gasoline than it does diesel fuel. Only here in the United States is diesel so stupidly more expensive than it is in Europe, but it is what it is.
Well, Chris, these kind of black swan events, a little play on words, not sure if it's quite an oxymoron, but predictably unpredictable. We know that they will happen. We just don't know where, when, what will cause them to occur, or the magnitude of the impact and effect it will have on the market. And that's why continuing to rebalance your portfolio and then update the fundamental balance that you are shooting to maintain is so important on a regular and ongoing basis. If I sort of went into my investments 10, 15, 20 years ago and have not really looked fundamentally at how my allocation is set up, how I am differentiated across different asset classes and investments, how I am set up proportionally with risk money and safe money, then after the last 5 to 10 years where the market has been so good, I am probably overweighted in risk and that time has gone by when I should have been gradually decreasing the amount of risk traditionally.
Yeah, absolutely, Peter. Kind of following that same modern portfolio theory process, if you will, and the very importance of rebalancing your portfolios on a very regular basis. And it's funny. All of us in 2021 were certainly much more bull markets. We had a fantastic year. Obviously, November is when the volatility started to happen, of course. And then we hit 2022 and everybody becomes a bear market person. Look, I want to do the exact opposite thing we were just doing that had been so successful over a long period of time. And, I think part of that, buddy, is, relates to our access to information, to media sources, 24/7 news cycle. I can't speak for everybody out there, but I take my news in measured instances. There's, it doesn't feel good to stare at it all day long, regardless of what's going on in the world. I don't need to know every breaking thing every second. You got to remember to live life and love life as well.
With a grain of salt, as the old saying goes. Yeah, the news can be constant, and unfortunately, they go after the headlines that suck us in emotionally. But Chris, we really do need to have that fundamental plan. Another current and ongoing financial concern for many, and something that we've actually seen even more of over the last 2 years since the pandemic began, is that not everybody gets to retire on their ideal or intended timeline. So if we are in the midst of one of these black swan events or regular market cycles, and then at the same time retire unexpectedly due to force majeure, due to a company saying they no longer require our services, furloughs, layoff, illness, pandemics, whatever the case is, or even the time at home where a lot of people kind of reevaluated their original thought on their retirement timeline. Studies show that as many as 60% of retirees do not or have not retired on their own intention and their planned timeline. That's something that we need to therefore plan in advance for.
So yeah, no question about it. The 2008 financial crisis, we had a lot of layoffs that had happened. Also in the 2000 to 2002 financial, the terrorist attacks, that long-term recession that we had there, many people were downsized and they had to take early retirement. If you're an accountant for a big corporation, you're going to cut the easy pieces to cut. Those that make a lot of money and are closer to retirement, offer them an incentive package. And still that happens to date. Right now, we're kind of on the other end of that. So many baby boomers retiring. There's not enough people to fill those markets. Fill the job market right now. And that goes all the way from teachers to, highly skilled professionals. We just don't have the population coming out of U.S. colleges to fill the skilled need, let alone the unskilled needs. And then you take an event like this for people that have just retired as an example, and, all of a sudden the market takes a 10, 15% hit. They look at their nest egg with, $150,000 less than what was in it. Maybe they will stay in the workplace a little bit longer and allow that to recover. So that door goes two different directions. Those that may have gotten forced out earlier, those that have voluntarily elected to stay a couple of years later. And, we were talking about portfolio rebalancing. So remember, for those of you that are still putting money into the 401ks, when you get dips in the marketplace like this, these are buying opportunities. Obviously, it's time to go in and continue on with that normal, dollar cost averaging. Every paycheck, putting more money in, you buy more shares at lower prices. And as things recover, then you get to certainly work your way, participate more in that recovery.
But Chris, in order to be prepared to identify and seize upon any opportunities like what we are seeing, you have to be properly positioned. You have to have a plan in place and know the fundamentals of that plan, when to act to sort of remove the emotion and make more fundamentally sound mathematic and financial decisions with your money and calculate those out. So we've talked about the and emphasized the importance of having that plan in place for continued and ongoing, not only retirement readiness, but financial savvy and IQ will be improved as a result of having a specific plan, not just the tools that are out there, a 401k, an IRA, maybe a stock portfolio, an investment strategy, but actually bringing that together into a plan is really what we see as helping people to identify opportunities, be strategic, and make sure that they are making progress regardless of whatever headwinds and challenges we face.
Yeah, absolutely, Peter. I think you were talking about a client that was getting ready to take Social Security at age 70. It worked up until that time frame, and that helped him maximize that, that guaranteed source of income. Not everybody can take advantage of that. So knowing, and being flexible for all the different things that can happen within the short phase between thinking about retirement and actually retiring, having the flexibility to react quickly to that. Like, for an example now would be, was somebody at age 62 who was retired this year, did they want to wait another year or two to take Social Security? Well, now if their 401k or IRAs have taken a hit as well, maybe they want to take Social Security earlier, and that's less money they would be pulling out of the IRAs to help, kind of offset that sequence risk we call. Yep. We call it sequence risk. When the market goes down, just as you're getting ready to retire, the sequence of returns has a huge impact. Go ahead, Peter.
Well, I was just going to say that can have a huge impact if we see sizable losses, significant downturns in the market that have happened during our working years. We can sort of work our way through. The paycheck provides our ability to make it through those downturns, but on the eve of retirement or fresh into retirement, kind of the few years before or few years after, those downturns can be significantly more impactful to our trajectory and likelihood for success moving through the decades of retirement. Again, why we need to have a plan in place and why it needs to be continually updated and evaluated and rebalanced for our goals, our timeline, our situation. And those are the things, ladies and gentlemen, that will help you to address both current and ongoing financial concerns. Chris McIntire helps his clients across Northwestern Ohio put such a plan together. The game plan for retirement, a written document that addresses income, investments, taxation, healthcare, legacy planning on a high level, those big topics, many subcategories underneath each and every one of those. And if you've got questions and concerns about your current setup and progress moving forward, pick up the phone, give Chris McIntire a call, 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. Chris, we talk about downturns in the market. No one wants to see them, but there's a time and place where we simply cannot afford to have a 20% loss on our life savings, a 25% downturn in the market, a quarter of our money evaporating and disappearing without us having anything to show for it. These times have happened. We haven't seen major situations like this for prolonged periods over the last decade plus, but certainly over the history of the market, there have been many instances where the market declines 20% or more. That's a lot of money for many folks that are in or nearing retirement to lose and still try to maintain financial confidence.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That hurts. That's an emotional element, especially for those that are just retiring now. It's a gut check, actually. And, it's why you and I have been advocating on this radio show for years, why you need to have a safe strategy so that you can say, look, plan A is not working out. I'm going to go to plan B, pull some money out of that, let plan A have some time to recover. Or maybe you call your safe money plan A if you're a little more conservative minded. Nothing wrong with that. We're not saying, we're not labeling anything here by any stretch. But as an overall, as a fiduciary to our clients, I have to advocate that they have some safe money over here in case we get something like a black swan event that we're experiencing right now. It's so nice. I sent a client an email just the other day, said, hey, it's a good thing you've got a lot of safe money here. He's got a very large stock position in the company that he had worked for. And I said, he probably doesn't want to sell it while it's going down, obviously. And say, look, that's why we have a safe money strategy over here. Hopefully you can, stomach where we're at and let it recover. But again, he knew he had a pretty big concentration in one position as a company he worked for a very long time, a Fortune 500 company. And, they're off about 20% for the year. That hurts when you got a large position in there. No question about it.
Indeed, but that's why we need to have a plan, because when we get into that home stretch or bearing our situation, what we can do, what we can afford to see as far as the impact of the market reflected in our portfolio, what is an appropriate exposure to the market changes over time, and the need for our dollars or from our dollars, the job that they must perform for us, also changes significantly during that transition from our working years to retirement. And when we see challenging times in the market, that makes that transition that much more of a difficult endeavor and challenge. And that's why you've got to have that plan put together. That's why Chris McIntire helps those that are retirement minded, either in retirement or a goal for retirement in the near future, to construct that plan. It's a document and a planning process that a lot of people have not experienced. Many of us have utilized the tools to build toward having that plan, but may have not brought it all together to address some of the top concerns, like, do I have enough? How can I make sure that it lasts? The fear of running out of money. Those are issues and concerns that are addressed in that game plan for retirement. If you would like to get that put together, pick up the phone, give a call, 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. Challenges, Chris, certainly can detract or derail from some of our financial progress, but there is a big difference, I think, between retirement readiness and retirement preparedness. I think a lot of us are out there ready to retire. Like, I just am tired of going to this job. I am so ready to retire. But that does not necessarily mean we are truly prepared for retirement.
That's a wonderful way to put it, Peter. A lot of people, after so many years, they fatigue out, they burn out, and they're ready to retire. Emotionally, mentally, physically, they might just be exhausted of the grind, so to speak. And, you hear it as much in what you do as what I do, is the stress, and especially out of the corporate world. That environment has changed substantially, where everybody's focused on profitability of the corporation, the return to shareholders, doing more with less. We get that, but being prepared to retire, having your estate planning up to date, knowing what the tax implications are going to be on the IRA and the 401k withdrawals, what to do with those IRAs and 401ks ahead of retirement, are paramount pieces. Are you going to be the same aggressive investor, going into retirement that you were pre-retiree, that side of things? And, what are you going to do if one of you passes away? Are you prepared to act on that? Speaking of kind of like a married couple there, if you will, somebody passes away, you might lose a Social Security benefit and some pension benefits as well. So some of those selections you make later in life to prepare for retirement are some of the biggest decisions you'll ever make in your lifetime. And, that's where we help a lot of people make some of the biggest decisions they've ever made since, asking their spouse to get married or buying their first home, their largest investment.
Those are lifetime decisions that hopefully most of us look back on and think were good decisions, Chris. We want retirement and all of the financial implications of retirement to be like that. Unfortunately, sometimes we look back on big decisions and say, well, better luck next time. That one was a mistake. We certainly don't want retirement or the decision for how to position our dollars, our assets, how we claim and collect Social Security, the tax decisions that we make to be decisions that we look back on with regret. And so we need to plan proactively and ahead of time. That is the key. That is the secret here, ladies and gentlemen. As we face financial headwinds, as we have current and ongoing financial concerns, that's what the game plan for retirement will help you to address. Pick up the phone, give a call, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194 for a discussion with Chris McIntire. And you can find a convenient time to have a sit-down review, a detailed forensic financial analysis and strategy session. You can do that via Zoom. You can do that in person in the office. Chris opening up the availability for a discussion with him and the team at McIntire Retirement Services to make sure that you've got a proactive, forward-looking plan to help you make that financial progress. 800-868-1194. Another current and ongoing financial concern, Chris, one that you talk a lot about, the concern of overpaying in taxes. Now, if we are efficient with our taxes and keep more of our money, of our current dollars, that can be as effective as shooting for higher returns, but typically has a lot less risk involved with it.
It sure does. And I'll give my my dad as an example. He has so much money withheld off their pensions and Social Securities. They get a big fat tax return every year. Look, and it works for him. It drives me crazy. I'm like, all you're doing is over inflate. You could get $700 more a month if you didn't do it that way. And, but, my dad's 88 and I'm not going to change his mind at this point. But, many people, are assuming that they've, throughout their working career, that they're going to be in a lower tax bracket in retirement than they were when they were working. Now, that's very much the case right now. Okay. Tax rates are historically low. They are set to increase in 2026 as the Trump tax cuts, if you will, not to get political here, those expire in 2026 if they aren't, made permanent, or not made permanent, but extended another 10 years. And that's why we're so big on the Roth IRA conversions. The people retiring now, Peter, you and I've talked previously, we see these big $1 million IRA plans that we never saw 20, 25 years ago because everybody had a pension. And what we're seeing now is all these other, these huge amounts of untaxed dollars that in a lot of likelihood are going to pass on to your children, maybe at a time when they're in a much higher income tax bracket than you are. So understanding when to make Roth IRA conversions is a very important aspect here as well, so that you win the tax game, not just leading the score at halftime, if you will.
There are a lot of times, Chris, where we cannot control major expenses in our own life and situations. Sometimes there are black swan events, but taxes is one of our largest known expenses in our lifetime, certainly in retirement, and it is an expense that we can control, we can schedule to some extent. There's part of it that we can't control, the fact that we have to pay some taxes, but it's no one's moral, legal, or ethical responsibility to overpay in taxes, as much as some of the mega wealthy ultra billionaires would like to project that they would be happy doing. They instead hire teams of accountants to ensure that they don't, that they pay only the absolute required minimum. And we should be doing the same. We should be strategizing. We should be working with a qualified, experienced professional to make sure that we are controlling our tax liability, controlling one of the biggest expenses that we will face in keeping more of our money. That's part of the planning process, ladies and gentlemen. And Chris McIntire will sit down with you, look at the accounts that you have, the the investments, the retirement assets, the fees that you're paying, the risks that you're taking, the taxes that you may be liable for, and bring everything together into a strategic plan, taking into account order of operations, how and when to claim and collect Social Security, what accounts to tap into for needed or necessary income or discretionary spending, and in what order, to make sure you are making those financial decisions with forethought, knowledge, education, and strategically. Pick up the phone, give a call, 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. Chris, we have a handful of other current and ongoing financial concerns on our list: healthcare, rate of return, emergencies, looking toward better interest rates, if rising interest rates can be quantified as better in this economy, the market downturns, but the biggest one on the list, and probably the last we'll have time for here, inflation. Can you address inflation and the fact that this is a constant and yet so often overlooked in many traditional planning projections?
Yes, inflation is a hidden stealth tax, and we're seeing it. It's not hidden anymore. We go to the grocery store and are shocked. My wife and I, we took the trip to the Outer Banks, and I went and bought, just some paper plates. It was $10 for paper plates. So some of the supply chain issues out there, but obviously gasoline is filling up the tank of gas with gas, looking to, obviously at record levels, and who knows where it stops. Is just, is a hard pill to swallow. If you're on a pension that doesn't have a cost of living adjustment, and Social Security, whose cost of living adjustment does not keep the pace with inflation, historically speaking, because we don't include food or energy in our inflationary issues when we calculate many of these adjustments, the consumer price index. So, you're literally having to do more with less, and that becomes a real challenge when it's running at 7 to 10%, like we're seeing here to start this year, man. That is significantly an important aspect for people to understand and to know. How do you handle that? We haven't had to deal with that since, my parents were working. My dad's going to be 89 years old. When I was a kid, I was born in 1965. We had some very lean years back in those high rates of inflation. And we're repeating that right now for some reason. So, all these events and things that happen have consequences.
It's been said that history does not repeat, but often rhymes. And the perception oftentimes is that, well, at least the market will help to combat and offset inflation. But on the contrary, if we look back at history, especially during times of higher than normal inflation, oftentimes the market struggled or declined. And so we really need to look at the combination of all of these factors, ladies and gentlemen, bringing them together into a plan, making sure we carefully examine the assumptions that your financial future and well-being is based off of, and testing those to make sure that we are confident that those assumptions can hold true. That is part of the planning process, and also eliminating as many assumptions and adding certainties where possible there at McIntire Retirement Services. If you've got questions, concerns, you would like to take advantage of that offer and opportunity for a complimentary planning review, pick up the phone, give Chris McIntire a call, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. You can also visit online, McIntireRetirementServices.com. Chris, we always appreciate your time, the insight that you provide, and the information that you share with savers and investors across Northwestern Ohio here on Your Game Plan for Retirement.
Thanks, Peter. It's my pleasure to be with everybody. Stay safe out there and pray for peace, folks.
Visit McIntireRetirementServices.com for many additional valuable resources, including other great episodes of Game Plan for Retirement with Chris McIntire. Be sure to subscribe.
The content of this radio show is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. You are encouraged to seek investment, tax, or legal advice from an independent professional advisor. Any investments and/or investment strategies mentioned involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. Advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, a registered investment advisor.
Fiduciary duty extends solely to investment advisory advice and does not extend to other activities such as insurance or broker-dealer services. Advisory clients are charged a quarterly fee for asset assets under management, while insurance products pay a commission, which may result in a conflict of interest regarding compensation.
Any comments regarding safe and secure investments and guaranteed income streams refer only to fixed insurance products. They do not refer in any way to securities or investment advisory products. Indexed or fixed annuities are not designed for short-term investments and may be subject to caps, restrictions, fees, and surrender charges as described in the annuity contract.